It was June 18, 2016. I stood at the altar, my best man next to me, but no bride. And then 5 minutes passed, no bride. 10 minutes passed, still no bride. It seemed like an eternity, but I had not lost heart. Why? Because she promised she would come. And then my heart began to race as I heard the church bells. My eyes widened as the doors flung open. The bridesmaids walked to the front and I could barely hold my excitement together because I knew these were all the signs that soon my bride would appear. And indeed, there she was. And in the same way, Jesus has promised that He will come to us. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself. Can it be that the biggest event in human history can happen in our generation? Well, I think it can. And I want to show you why. Hi friends, it's Melvin here again. If you are new to the channel, thank you for joining us today. I hope you will find this video valuable. Before we look at the signs that the Bible gives us, first I want to establish a framework that is very important for you to know. This is what Jesus says in the context of all these signs that we'll look at. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Now here's why that is important. When my wife was going to give birth, she first started with some milder contractions, but over time they became a lot more painful and they came even more frequently. And when we were in the hospital, when she was about to give birth, I remember her saying loudly, it's coming, the baby is coming. And the midwife reassured her, not yet. And then again, a few minutes later, the baby is coming, I can feel it. And the midwife checked and, you're getting closer, but still not yet. Now here's why Jesus is likening these signs to birth pains. Over time, the signs are getting more and more intense and more frequent. They're not like one-time unique occurrences. They're part of a larger increasing trend. So you also, when you see all these signs, know that it is near at the doors. Jesus is making a disclaimer though. But of that day and hour, no one knows. So knowing the signs isn't so we can set dates. No, they're indicators that we're getting closer and closer to that moment that we're looking forward to when Jesus appears. Now, the first sign that I want to share with you is kind of like the catalyst for all the other signs. And that is, number one, increasing lawlessness. And because lawlessness will be increased. This is our world today, isn't it? People don't like being told what to do. There's this increasing lack of respect for authorities, whether it be parents or law enforcement or any kind. But this isn't just talking about these worldly laws and authorities. This is talking specifically about a disregard of the law of God. The law of God in the Bible is actually called the law of liberty, freedom. It's a law that lays out the principles of life. It shows us what love looks like in action. It's a description of our designed operating system, how we can live in harmony with each other and with nature. So the more we turn away from God's law, which the Bible calls sin, the more dysfunctional we become. And not just we as individuals, but even as this human family and even the environments in which we live. And that's what all these signs are about. All, except for the last one, so make sure to watch to the end, they're the results, the natural results of humanity increasingly breaking the design, these laws, these principles of life and love. God is not the one initiating these signs. He's not making them happen. We, as a broken humanity, we make them happen. And the consequences of our collective sin, they're getting worse and worse over time, and this results in the broken world that we see and these increasing signs. Number two, love decreases. The love of many will grow cold. And we see that not only people love God less and less, but also on a social level, we're experiencing increasing level of broken love. Half of the marriages in the US end in divorce. In the early 1900s, this was only 1 out of 12. When a couple is getting married and they recite their wedding vows to each other during the ceremony, 9 other couples in the US have divorced during that time. That's broken love. Number 3, wars. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. We've seen some major unprecedented wars in recent history compared to when Jesus spoke these words. The 20th century has been the bloodiest century in human history. The world spends over $200 million on soldiers, ammo, and war machines every hour. Number 4, 5, and 6. Earthquakes, famines, and pestilences. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences. Between 2004 and 2014, 18 earthquakes with a magnitude of 8 or more rattled subduction zones around the globe. That's an increase of 265% over the average rate of the previous century. Then we have famines. Did you know that 1 out of 10 people in the world suffers from chronic undernourishment? 45% of all child deaths in 2011 were due to undernourishment. Millions of people, children, are dying because they don't have any food. It's unprecedented. And there's been an incredible increase in natural disasters in just this last century. And then we have pestilences, deadly infections. Infectious diseases have always caused illness and death, but in the last decade, the Institute of Medicine has noticed a disturbing trend. The number of new infectious agents has been on the rise. Even today, experts are surprised to see how quickly this current virus is mutating. Number 7, violence. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. So how was it in Noah's day? Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Is our world filled with violence? Not only do we have these mass shootings that can apparently happen anywhere, but also violence in our homes. Globally, it is estimated that up to 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 years have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional violence or neglect in the past year. That's crazy. And you know, the thing is, people have become so desensitized to violence as they hear about it in the news all the time, they see it in movies, they do it as entertainment themselves in these increasingly realistic video games. You know, violence is becoming normalized. Number 8, sexual immorality. Likewise as it was also in the days of Lot. So pretty much in the same way as Jesus is pointing us back to Noah, he's now pointing us back to the time of Lot. And Lot lived in Sodom, about which the Bible says, as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them in similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality, and gone after strange flesh. Is it even a question if we see sexual immorality in our world? 1 in 3 women in the world have experienced physical or sexual violence. 25% of all internet searches are porn related. 1 out of 7 senior pastors in the church watch porn. Sexual immorality, it's everywhere. There's even currently this worldwide push promoting these sexual and gender ideas that are not in harmony with what the Bible teaches, and they're probably one of the most powerful and influential movements in our world today. Number 9, self-centeredness. But know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves. The Royal Society for Public Health, they did a survey among British teenagers about social media. Guess what the first 2 mentioned positive effects were? Self-expression, self-identity. Now we all know that social media isn't as much about being social, it's about self. And the rest of this Bible passage actually mentions even more characteristics that, well, read through it and you see a description of our culture today. Which leads us to number 10, cancel culture. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. That is like reading a perfect description of our culture today. Everyone is offended about everything. There's no room for dialogue or disagreement. You're either with me or you're against me. There's so much hatred, so much censorship, so much division. It's a very toxic culture that we're living in. Number 11, a false gospel. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. We are living in a post-truth age. Truth is considered relative. It doesn't matter. And you certainly don't want to hold on to anything that is unpopular. And for that reason, most Christian churches today, because people don't really like the idea of laws, they're teaching that the law of God is done away with. Just doesn't matter. Just live however you want. As long as you say you're a Christian, you're fine. Now they're preaching a false gospel. It may draw the crowds, it may please them to hear it, but it isn't what the Bible teaches. And though it may seem attractive and easy and non-confrontational on the surface, it's actually not good for us, because Jesus says that the truth shall make you free. Number 12, false miracles. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Now, I've been involved in these churches and movements with all kinds of healings and signs and wonders. But friends, not all supernatural manifestations and miracles, they are not all from God. And we're to believe the Bible over our senses and experiences. To the law and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it is because there's no light in them. Number 13, Spiritism. Now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron. So this is talking about Spiritism, the occult, the New Age, and Wicca, where more and more of these ideas are accepted in secular societies, as well as that they're influencing the Christian churches. Think, for example, of yoga and meditation and mindfulness, all these Eastern kind of exercises, or the mystic beliefs that you're able to communicate with the dead. Many of these things aren't only accepted, but they're mainstream and even encouraged in society. So people in general are pushing more and more away from God and embracing Spiritism. Number 14, mocking the soon second coming. Knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. You know, I used to say it myself. People for all generations have said that Jesus is coming soon, but he hasn't come yet. And you know, many people think like that, and they mock the idea because they don't see that Jesus is coming. But friends, when I think back of my wife when she was pregnant and was about to give birth and thought, now the baby is coming, and the midwife said, no, not yet, I thought it was a bit funny. But guess what? At one point, the baby came. And so it will be with Jesus. When we look at the signs, we see it increase, and at some point, Jesus will come. Number 15, persecution. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. See, because the world is moving toward a godless society, the hate toward godly Christians will grow. And we're already experiencing that today, as not only Christian values and beliefs are under attack, but even the freedom to personally exercise that faith. But friends, this will get worse, even on a global scale, up to the point where they will persecute Christians to death. Now up to here, all the signs, they've been the consequences of sin. But for many people, these signs will be like a wake-up call, a warning, which brings us to the final sign, the one on the list that God does initiate. Number 16, a worldwide movement of God. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Friends, the good news of Jesus will be preached everywhere by people like you and me. You know, with just a few clicks, you can share any of our videos with people from literally all over the world. It's never been this simple. Let's do this together. You know, the world will get worse and worse, but we're filled with peace and hope and even excitement. Not because we enjoy seeing the results of sin and how it's destroying people's lives. Rather the opposite. We hate that so much, we want that to end. And we know that the only way suffering will end is when Jesus comes back. And because God's message is going out into all the world, millions of people will accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. Friends, the signs are speaking for themselves. Jesus is coming soon. And in our next video of the series, we will talk about how Jesus comes.